Many experts wonder what happened to Sergio's race pace as he is ever more slipping away from Verstappen, where he outqualified the Dutchman 3 times in the first 8 races and winning the Monaco Grand Prix. He has been lacking since. He is currently 13-3 behind in qualifying and 12-4 in races. Even more troublesome is that in the last 8 races, he only managed to beat Verstappen in Silverstone after Verstappen got severe floor and bodywork damage. His current average qualifying deficit in dry weather over the last 6 races has grown to 0.6 of a second. That is the largest average qualifying deficit to any teammate over the last 6 races. There is no doubt as to Perez's ability to score points for his team this season. He has been the best performing second Red Bull driver after Mark Webber during the golden era of Red Bull. However, it is much easier to achieve podium places in a car that is one of the best on the grid than in a Williams. Ex-Red Bull driver Sebastian Vettel announced his retirement from the sport at the end of July. Since 2020, it seemed that Sebastian's career went downhill. After having a terrible year at Ferrari, he had to make room for Carlos Sainz and move to the newly formed Aston Martin team. However, this adventure was far from a success, and the lack of a competitive seat was one of the reasons why the 4-time world champion decided to focus on his family and other interests after this year. Although Vettel decided to retire, many fans will speculate whether he decides to come back in the future, just like his great example Michael Schumacher. When Sebastian was asked whether he is interested in a potential role at Red Bull, he said, "I don't consider it yet. I just decided to quit racing. Time will tell, and maybe it is possible to do something. I will see how I feel if an offer is made." The German statement implies that he is far from closing the door to F1, like he did when he announced his retirement. In a recent interview with the race, he mentioned that there is no substitute for F1. It is no secret that Vettel holds great relationships with both Horner and Helmut Marko. In an interview with Sky Germany, Marko said, "You have to take into account that he didn't have a competitive cockpit and probably wouldn't have found one either. So for me, the decision is the right one." However, with Sergio struggling at the moment and with no clear indication whether he can turn around the situation, Red Bull's call to Vettel might come sooner than later. But would Vettel do better than Perez? Does Vettel's driving style suit the Red Bull better? Why does Perez struggle so much to adapt? And what does Pierre Waché, technical director of Red Bull, say about the RB18? Let's find out. It has been 3 years since Vettel secured his last race win. Although he has seen better times, the German remains one of the most successful drivers in F1 history. With 53 wins at 21 different circuits, he ranks 3rd on the overall rankings of most F1 victories. He was extremely dominant during the 2011 and 2013 season at Red Bull and managed to pull off 2 miracles by winning the 2010 and 2012 season while coming back from a huge point deficit in both cases. The 2009 to 2013 generation Red Bull cars were notorious for their superb front rotation and extreme stability mid-corner. Although Red Bull used the slightly less powerful Renault V8 engine, it made up for the time loss in the corners. However, the 2014 regulations and the introduction of the V6 hybrid engines made Red Bull and Sebastian lose their competitive advantage. The German even got outscored by 71 points by his new teammate Daniel Ricciardo. After the 2014 debacle, he moved to Ferrari, where he showed once more to possess great racecraft. His biggest chances for a 5th world title would come in 2018, where the Ferrari proved to be highly competitive. Unfortunately for Vettel, a crash during the German Grand Prix and a race win for Lewis Hamilton meant the end to his title aspirations. Hamilton continued to win 5 more races out of the next 6 and eventually secured his 5th title. In the next years, Vettel arguably struggled to find the proper pace. However, with his resignation comes an end to a stunning career. But is it really the end? Vettel has said that he is still unsure as to what his next steps will be. To motorsport.com, he said, "No other race class will be able to replace F1. Time will tell what will be something that is possible to do, if there is an offer of any such nature or not." Sebastian is currently 35 years old, but fans already talk about a potential 2025 return after Perez's contract is up. Alonso has proven that a sabbatical can be positive to the motivation, and that will only help increase Vettel's odds. On the other hand, Perez is currently doing an amazing job and is 3rd in the standings. However, the gap between him and Verstappen is ever increasing since the summer break. The average qualifying gap in the last 6 races increased to 0.6. Perez has frequently been explaining that the Red Bull upgrades didn't do him any good. With more updates coming in 2023, Perez's driving style gets less and less suited to the car. So would Vettel's driving style better match the Red Bull cars? Sebastian developed a unique driving style at his time at Red Bull to optimally utilize the great rear downforce and traction. Vettel would brake into the corner, getting the car turning sharply by rotating it around the inside front wheel, and then gets on the throttle early, using the downforce created by the exhausts to stop the rear sliding too much. However, the 2014 generation cars saw a much more unstable rear end, which significantly impacted the German's driving style, having him lose out on much time. During the 2017 to 2021 generation cars, Vettel performed better due to higher front and rear grip levels. In both 2017 and 2018, he became second in the Drivers' Championship. However, the current generation cars see a more standardized front and rear wing and are more prone to under- and oversteer. Red Bull is developing their car around Verstappen, who prefers a sharp front rotation while not caring about an unstable rear. Although Vettel prefers a sharp front rotation as well, he doesn't like an unstable rear as he brakes late and depends on great traction out of the corners. It is expected that Vettel will lose out on valuable lap time compared to the Dutchman coming out of the slow and medium corners. This is also the part where the Mexican is losing most of his time. Perez struggles to get on the throttle due to a loose and unstable rear end. Because he brakes later, he slows down in the corners more than Verstappen, who carries more speed. A slower car means less tire rotation, which makes it easier to have the rear brake out when applying the throttle. Perez relies on a stable rear to prevent his back end from breaking out. This is something that his team notices as well. So what did Pierre Wache, technical director of Red Bull, say about Perez? In an interview with racefans.net, he said, "I think it's multiple factors, but the main factor is clearly the car balance, the confidence with the car, compared to the beginning of the year when the car was a bit more balanced for Perez and a bit less for Max. The development we put on the car during the season seemed to have moved it away from what was ideal for Perez. Trying to find the right setup for him is quite difficult to get him as confident as he could be to beat or to fight with Max. When we develop the car, then you go for the best performance development. It is suiting more Max, but it was not the purpose of the development. It was more developing the car. I would say normally you will lose it a bit of performance to make it handle better. Doesn't mean it's a lot, but it is the type of direction." Red Bull has been bringing upgrades that are in line with Adrian Newey's philosophy of a sharp front rotating car. The Austrian team also managed to lose about 15 kilograms of weight, which all led to a reduction of the understeering characteristics. As the car got quicker, it also became more suited to Verstappen's driving style, while Perez's driving style started to prevent him from getting everything out of the car. So ultimately, would Vettel do better than Perez? Many teammates struggled to adjust their driving style to the characteristics of the Red Bull car. Although Vettel won 4 world titles, he did so by having a car built around his unique way of driving. The 2022 generation cars, and more specifically the Red Bull build around Verstappen, would have traits that are not to Vettel's liking. He would certainly lose out coming out of the slow and medium speed corners, but might be able to carry more speed in the corner, so he would experience less oversteer and potentially have a smaller time loss compared to Perez. Do you think Vettel would do better than Perez? Let me know in the comments section below.